Hello, hello, hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on your time zone. Welcome to my channel. My name is Ogbanje Joseph. So today, please, before I go into the lecture proper, please subscribe to this channel, share, like, as well as drop a comment on the comment section. So today we're going to be looking at food crisis and national development. Food crisis and national development is, of course, that's our topic. Now, the importance of food in the life of man cannot be overemphasized. This is because food is the primary need of man, and without it, man faces extinction. Food is one of the basic needs of man for self-preservation, and the absence of it means man would degenerate or is subjected to a subhuman condition of hunger, famine, and diseases, which ultimately leads to death. The global food crisis has raised a lot of concerns, both at national, regional, and global levels, with a view for nations to developing an enviable strategies and measures to curtail its spread. Food crisis can be defined as the process where there is scarcity of food, okay, to feed the population. Now, according to the Malthusian theory, food crisis occurs when the population increases at geometric progression and food production increases at arithmetic progression. Thomas Malthus opined that population of a people is capable of doubling after every 15 years. As such, okay, as such, if the food production equals the population, such is referred to as the optimum population. But there will be crisis where there is population increase without the corresponding increase in food production. Now, food crisis often leads to the strong upward trend in global food prices, and there will always be widespread concern that hunger and poverty will increase sharply across the world. According to the UN 2003, over 9 million people in the world go to bed hungry. This means that the world is experiencing food crisis, and subsequently survival becomes a question to be answered by national governments, regional organizations, and global body like the UN. Now let us look at the impact of food crisis on national development. The impact of food crisis on national development. But before we look at the impact, let us look at what is national development. National development can be defined as the ability of a society or citizens of a particular country to jointly increase their capacity for dealing with their environment in order to improve and advance their spheres, such as in economic, social, political, moral, mental, religious, and other spheres. Now, this is done in order to secure and extend their life expectancy beyond the short term, and making them immune against the threat of authoritarian regression. Now, the following are the impacts of food crisis on national development. The following are the impacts of food crisis on national development. Number one, food crisis leads to high prices and scarcity of food. Now, where there is food crisis, it leads to high prices. You understand? The price of food will actually be taken beyond the reach of the average man on the street. And of course, scarcity will set in. Okay, so that is actually one of the impact of food crisis on national development. And where there is high prices and scarcity of food, the population will not be fed well. And if the population is not fed well, it will also affect their productivity, and it impinges on the national development of the nation. That's number one. Number two, food crisis exacerbate poverty. Now, if people are not fed well, they will not be able to be productive. And if they are not productive, poverty sets in. And of course, if poverty sets in, it affects the national development of the country. That's number two. Number three, it allows for an unhealthy population. If the population is not healthy, the population cannot be productive. And if the population is not productive, it will impinge on the national development of that country. So to that extent, it affects the national development of that country. And of course, the blame is actually put on food crisis. That is number three. Number four, food crisis puts pressure on wage rates. Of course, if there is food crisis, the prices of food will skyrocket. And if the prices of food skyrockets, it's going to impinge on the wages of people. And if it impinges on the wages of the people, of course, it will affect their productivity, and of course, hence affecting the national development of the country. Okay, number five, food crisis affects government revenues. The money that government is supposed to actually use to channel into other sectors of development is now channeled into silos. And so because of that, it's going to affect the national development of that country. So to that extent, okay, food crisis is capable of affecting a nation's development. Okay, now let us look at number six. So what is number six? Number six is that food crisis affects exports and import of a country. Okay, where there's food crisis, the country will not be able to export, to other countries, particularly food products or agricultural products, because whatever is actually achieved within a country is consumed within that country. So to that extent, it will affect export and import. And if it affects the export, it's going to affect the export, the foreign earnings of that country, thereby affecting the national development of such a country. The next one is that food crisis leads to street demonstration. Where there is street demonstration, it affects the national infrastructure of the country, because where there is demonstration, it can lead to crisis, and where there is crisis, it can lead to violence. Where there is violence, of course, what you have is the destruction of lives and properties, including national assets. All of that will impinge on the national development of a country. Then number 8 is that it affects family by causing tension in the families. Where the families are affected, the nation is affected. And where the nation is affected, national development will become a thing, not to even talk about, because of course it is family that gives birth to a nation. And it is nation that gives birth to national development. So where there's no nation, where the family is affected, it affects the nation in general, because it will actually impinge on the national development of that nation. So to that extent, of course, food crisis actually affects the national development of a nation. So the next one is that food crisis can hamper individual from achieving his full potentials. Now, where there's food crisis, the people will not be fed well. And if they are not well fed, they will not be able to actually focus, because they can't think well. They will not be able to actually, achieve their full potentials. And if they are not able to achieve their full potentials, of course, the national development of the country will be thoroughly affected. And where the national development of the country is thoroughly affected, individuals will not be able to live their lives to the fullest. Thank you very much.